The old pocket watch felt heavy in my hands, its golden surface dulled with age. It was the last thing my grandfather gave me before he passed away last month. "Keep it safe, Emma," he'd whispered from his hospital bed. "There's more to it than meets the eye." I never imagined those would be his last words to me, or that they would change my life forever. "Is that all he left you?" My mother-in-law Barbara's shrill voice cut through my memories. She was examining the watch with poorly disguised disgust. "After all those years you spent caring for him." I pulled the watch back protectively. It was his favorite possession. We were all gathered in my living room, my husband Tom, his mother Barbara, and his sister Kate. They'd insisted on coming over after the funeral, supposedly to support me. But I knew better. They'd been circling like vultures ever since Grandpa George got sick. "Well," Barbara sniffed, adjusting her designer handbag. "I suppose we couldn't expect much from a retired high school teacher. Not everyone can be successful like our family." I bit my tongue. Yes, their family had money, something they never let me forget. Tom's father had left them a comfortable inheritance, which Barbara managed to stretch by living in Tom's childhood home and constantly demanding money from her children. "Mom's right," Kate chimed in, examining her manicured nails. "I mean, you spent every weekend with him for the past 5 years, missed all our family vacations, and all you got was an old watch?" "I didn't do it for an inheritance," I said quietly. "I loved him. He was my only family after my parents died." "Oh, sweetie." Barbara patted my hand condescendingly. "That's because you're simple. You don't understand how the real world works. Right, Tom?" I looked at my husband expectantly. Surely he'd defend me this time. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Maybe you should sell the watch, Emma. We could use the money for that kitchen remodel Mom's been suggesting." "Absolutely not." I clutched the watch tighter. "It's not for sale." Barbara's eyes narrowed. "Now listen here, you ungrateful girl. You married into this family. Everything you have is because of us. That shabby little bookstore of yours would have failed years ago if Tom hadn't invested in it." "My money," I corrected her. "From my second job teaching night classes, Tom never invested a penny." "How dare you?" Barbara stood up, her face reddening. "After everything we've done for you, Tom, are you going to let her talk to me like this?" Tom stood too, his weak chin trembling. "Emma, give me the watch. Mom's right, we should sell it. You're being selfish." I backed away, tears stinging my eyes. "No, this is mine. Grandpa gave it to me. That senile old man probably didn't even know what he was doing." Barbara spat. "Tom, take it from her." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Tom lunged for the watch. I twisted away, but Kate stuck out her foot, tripping me. The watch flew from my hands as I fell. Barbara caught it with a triumphant smile. "Finally, let's see what this precious treasure is really worth." She turned it over roughly in her hands, her long nails scratching the surface. "Probably not even real gold. Just like everything else in your family, fake and worthless." The doorbell rang. Mrs. Emma Chen, a tall man in an expensive suit, stood at the door, holding a leather briefcase. "I'm James Morrison, your grandfather's attorney. May I come in?" Barbara immediately switched on her society smile. "Oh, we were just having a family discussion about dear George's watch." Such a meaningful gift. Mr. Morrison's eyes fixed on the watch in her hands. "Indeed, a very meaningful gift. Would you mind returning it to its rightful owner?" "Of course," Barbara said sweetly, reluctantly handing it back to me. "We were just admiring it." "Good." Mr. Morrison sat down, opening his briefcase. "Because that watch is quite literally the key to your grandfather's legacy." The room fell silent. "You see," he continued, "George Chen wasn't just a high school teacher. He was also a brilliant investor who built a substantial fortune over 50 years. Very few people knew about his wealth. He preferred to live simply and give generously to education charities." My hands trembled as I held the watch. "The watch," Mr. Morrison explained, "contains coordinates to a safety deposit box. Your grandfather asked me to wait 1 month after his death before revealing this, to see how people would react to what appeared to be a modest inheritance." He turned to face my in-laws, his expression hardening. He wanted to know who would value his granddaughter's love and loyalty over material possessions. Barbara's face had gone pale. How substantial are we talking about?" The estate is valued at approximately $68 million. Kate's wine glass shattered on the floor. The silence in my living room was deafening. $68 million. The number hung in the air like a physical presence. Barbara recovered first, her shock transforming into a sugary sweet smile. Emma, darling, we were just teasing earlier. Family jokes. We're all so happy for you. Let me finish, Mr. Morrison interrupted, pulling out more documents. The estate includes several conditions. First, the safety deposit box coordinates are encoded in the watch's mechanism. Any damage to the watch would have made the fortune inaccessible. Barbara's face turned green as she remembered how roughly she handled it. Second, he continued, Mr. Chen installed cameras in this house 3 months ago with Emma's permission. Every interaction, every comment, every attempt to bully or manipulate her has been recorded. Tom jumped to his feet. You spied on us? No, I said quietly. Grandpa was protecting me. He knew what was coming. Mr. Morrison nodded. The final condition is this. Emma has full control over how to distribute the inheritance. She can share it with family members, but only those who showed genuine care and respect before the revelation. Kate burst into tears. But that's not fair. We're family. Are we? I stood up, finding strength in my grandfather's posthumous support. Let's review the past few years, shall we? I turned to Barbara. You called my grandfather a senile old fool at Christmas dinner when he gave you a handmade scarf instead of an expensive gift. I was joking, she protested weakly. You told Tom to divorce me last year because my poor family connections were embarrassing. I was just looking out for my son's future. I faced Kate. You deliberately excluded me from your wedding because you didn't want common people in your photos. Finally, I looked at Tom, my voice breaking slightly. And you? You never once stood up for me, not once in 7 years of marriage. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat. There's one more thing. He handed me another envelope. The results of the private investigation Mr. Chen ordered 6 months ago. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. Tom with another woman. Expensive restaurants. Hotel receipts. A secret apartment. 3 years, I whispered. You've been cheating for 3 years? Tom fell back into his chair, face ashen. Emma, I can explain. Save it. I slipped off my wedding ring. I want a divorce. Now let's not be hasty. Barbara interjected. We can work this out. Think of the family. I am, I replied. I'm thinking of the family who actually loved me, who taught me that character matters more than money, who set up this whole test knowing exactly what it would reveal. Mr. Morrison smiled. Shall I proceed with the distribution plans we discussed, Emma? I nodded. Yes. The Educational Foundation in Grandpa's name, scholarships for underprivileged students, and the community center renovation. What about us? Kate demanded. You get exactly what you gave me, nothing. Barbara launched into a tirade about family loyalty and gratitude, but her words were cut short by security guards entering the room. These gentlemen will escort you out, Mr. Morrison announced. The restraining orders are already filed. Any attempts at contact will result in the release of all recorded evidence of harassment and manipulation to the media. As they were led away, Barbara turned back one last time. You'll regret this. You're nothing without our family name. I held up the watch, smiling. Actually, I'm Emma Chen. And my grandfather taught me that true wealth isn't in a bank account. It's in knowing who you really are and standing up for what's right. 1 year later, the Chen Educational Foundation was thriving. Hundreds of students who couldn't afford college were getting their chance. The community center offered free classes, job training, and support services. I sold the bookstore and opened a larger one, with a special section dedicated to education and self-improvement. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of my former in-laws in their luxury cars, driving past slowly, watching the success they could have been part of. Tom married his mistress. They lived in a small apartment after Barbara lost most of their money in bad investments. Kate's social media was full of complaints about having to work a real job for the first time in her life. As for me, I wore Grandpa's watch every day, not for the fortune it unlocked, but for the wisdom it represented. Sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't money. It's the courage to stand up for yourself and the wisdom to know who really deserves a place in your life. On quiet evenings, I'd sit in my study, looking at old photos of Grandpa George. You saw it all coming, didn't you? I'd whisper. You knew the money would show their true colors. I could almost hear his reply. Money doesn't change people, Emma. It just reveals who they've been all along. The watch ticked softly on my wrist, keeping perfect time, just like Grandpa had planned.